Brian White has blown up the internet. He has gone viral. And I'm just going to try to get on the coattails, Brian. That's all it is. This is a coattail show. I figured that some of the folks in my audience have not yet seen your big video that came out yesterday. And the day before, I think you had a couple of them that were kind of tied together, and that they deserve to know what was in that amazing set of videos. So I just want to, hello, Brian. How are you doing?
Hello. Hello. It is not as cold as it's been. It's still
Oh,
pretty
that's
cold. You know what? I just checked the thermometer. It is as cold as it's been, and now I'm used to it. I'm numb.
I
So
see.
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good.
All right, good. All right. So it appears, people keep talking about the competition is coming, the competition is coming. Generally speaking, the competition that everybody's, if you get honest about it, the only real competition is in China. There's no real competition, Rivian being the closest thing to competition in the United States. But in China, we have BYD, we've got XPeng, or however they pronounce their name, because I've heard it both ways. And now you've uncovered some competition in the FSD space. So
Yeah.
talk to me.
Sure. So let's one thing I like to get out of the way early is it's not Xpeng, it's Xiaopeng. And
That's
I
what I thought.
and I typically say Xiaopeng, but when Xpeng does their international marketing, they call themselves Xpeng. Uh,
Okay, now I know.
so
No,
so
that's
it is so both are acceptable. I will continue to say Xiaopeng until their marketing reaches my market, at
there you
which
go.
time I think it's appropriate to use whichever nomenclature they prefer. Uh, so there are a lot of very big companies in China. You said there's no real competition to speak of outside of China, and I would largely agree. There are a lot of companies doing some things. BMW is starting to get serious. Porsche's gotten serious. VW's got quite an offering. Hyundai as well. But these are not generational changes. These are pretty good EVs.
Yeah.
Some of them beat Tesla on a number of metrics. None of them beat them on all metrics. So when you find a car that someone says this car is better than Tesla, you have to ask them for what use case. What is your use case? If what you need, if you're driving zigzagging cross country all year, Lucid might be the best choice for you because it has fantastic range. If you're racing, there are different
Yeah.
use cases. I need a pickup that can handle my camper Lightning. That's what you need is a Lightning or a Silverado. Got it. Settled. China is a whole different ball of wax. And we've seen people saying that these videos that Kyle made must be fake because I've never seen one on YouTube. How is this the only guy on YouTube? For reference, YouTube is banned in China. The very few content producers we see out of China have to use a VPN,
Mm,
which is kind of illegal. You have
mm,
to get a permit to have
mm.
a VPN, which at that point would mean you probably shouldn't be using YouTube.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to register my VPN in China. So we're not going to see the wealth of footage we would if this was in, say, Europe or the US.
Right.
Is the competition coming in China? It's here. One of the first rumors I would see, and there's a lot of myths surrounding Chinese companies. The first one is they steal IP. They've stolen everything. They That was more true 25, 30 years ago. Today, less true. China has true innovation. If you look at products from like DJI, they make a number of products that are first of their kind and better than the competition and cheaper. I don't know who you copy if you're making something for the first
First
time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big one. That notion needs to kind of go to rest. They
Well,
haven't still Sure.
let me just slow you down a little tiny bit.
All right, all
Yeah.
right.
Okay. I mean, I've been dealing in
I'm
China.
excited, Randy.
I've
I'm on
been,
my
I've
second
been, I've
coffee.
been, I've been dealing in China for, 40 years or something like that. My partner was one of the first people to go to China and start buying out of China, my ex-partner. And the truth is that they do steal IP and they do steal products. And so you just have to be careful. You just have to, when you're dealing with the Chinese, you just have to be careful. And it's still going on today. If you put something up on, I'm going to forget the name of their There,
AliExpress, or I mean,
yeah,
if you put something on Amazon,
yeah,
it immediately shows up
it just shows
on
up. Yeah.
Temu and Wish.
Exactly. So, but yes, Trump last time when he was in office, part of the trade deal they made was to have them start enforcing more of the laws with regard to our marks and patents. So that has helped somewhat. Go ahead.
That trademark and well, I don't know about trademark. I can't speak to that. I haven't had direct experience in the last 20 years on that in China. When I lived there, trademarks and IP were, I mean, they weren't even suggestions. And Chinese brands would snipe each other just as much as a
Right,
foreign brand.
right.
But IP protection is something they've been taking pretty seriously for a good 20 years. When you see a Chinese copy, what they're copying is not the process or the design. What they're copying is the outcome. So let's talk about the thing that makes an electric car what it is. For the most part, is the battery management system, and the software. They don't use the same batteries. They use almost entirely LFP, while other countries use primarily NMC.
Mhm.
So the batteries are different. The form factor of the batteries is different. The BMS has to be entirely different. The battery management system for an LFP battery is different than for an NMC battery. The motors are their own designs. Some of them are very good, very, very clever, very innovative. And then the software is entirely bespoke. What they're trying to copy is a good experience, not the individual lines of code that make it a good experience, but the experience itself. So what they're copying is the outcome, not the actual product. And in that regard, China's the claim that IP is bad, theft is rampant, is not well supported. The designs, there are a lot of cars that look very similar to a Model 3 or a Model Y.
Yeah.
But I would say that's, first of all, design, as you know, designs are not something you can patent per se, which is
Well,
why
you can get a design patent. It's just not nearly as enforceable. But then you also have what you call palming off. And I've been an expert witness in trials with regard to palming off. And palming off is where you're trying to confuse the consumer.
Mm,
And you can sue
yes,
for palming off, which is not. And again, you may not be able to sue in China for palming off. They may have
sure.
no palming off rules at all for all I
But if
know.
you look at like Gucci, they own trademarks. They
Mhm.
don't own, but you can't patent a shirt per se.
No,
So
it's
if something has a similar theme, okay, that's, they have to draw the line somewhere. So in that regard, there are a lot of cars that borrow from European and American designs, US designs. So tough, tougher to say on that front. So then we get into the question of, are they well, China only makes junk. And I've even had some commenters say, I've been to China, I've driven an EV there, it was junk. And I'm confident they also make junk. But that doesn't mean they exclusively make junk. And if you look at the cars that they export to other markets, they are fine. They're good quality. Kyle was quick to point out that. So the videos we're talking about, Kyle from Out of Spec came on my show to do a pair of videos about the vehicles and about the autonomous systems. And he said that for the most part, the ride quality is inferior in Chinese cars. In the comments, I had people saying, he's a shill for China. He's only saying good things. And I also had people with Chinese names saying, this guy is so negative on China. I can't believe it. Guys, that's what happens when you're honest. You can find the good and the bad. And China, and Kyle famously is not for sale. When I invited him to an event as a speaker, I said, let me know how many rooms you need and we'll take care of it. And he said, oh, no, I don't do that. Well, yeah, he doesn't want to be beholden to me. I'm nobody. That's amazing. And greatly appreciated because our budget was already spent. But the quality can be there. Your iPhone is high quality and it's made in China. Your Australian Model 3 is high quality and it's made in China. So the quality issue, while poor quality does exist in China, it doesn't mean it's all poor quality.
No. Again, same thing in importing from China and creating products to be made in China. Even recently, my sister's product that we just created 3 years ago The quality's fine because we insisted on, certain parameters, and they'll meet the parameters if you insist on them. Yeah.
Yes, yes. If you want something for a penny, we can make it.
Right, right,
But really, this should be a 4-penny item.
right, right.
You'll see the difference.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, so I'm mostly interested not in the cars themselves because I kind of have a general sense, and I think we've talked about some of the car, and we don't spend a lot of time on my channel talking about the competition in that way.
Sure.
Maybe
You want
we
to
will
talk
at some point, but
FSD.
the FSD, that's a whole nother story.
It
We
is.
do want to be ahead on FSD if at all possible.
Yes. So there's a couple tricks here. One thing Kyle pointed out is that he really wants to do a head-to-head comparison between Tesla FSD and the Chinese designed FSDs. And the trick is they don't exist in the same universe.
Right.
FSD is not yet available in China, and the Chinese autonomous systems are not yet available in any of the markets where Tesla's FSD is available. And I compare that to a battle of the penguins versus puffins. You'll never see it. It doesn't happen. So they're from different hemispheres.
Right.
And nary the twain shall cross. Okay, so what are we talking about? China has a bunch of companies that are already running driverless taxis in a variety of cities. Wuhan, Beijing, Shenzhen, maybe a variety of places. Kyle didn't cover those. He wasn't in those places. He can only cover what he sees.
And we've covered that a ton on this channel because Brian Wang is an expert on that, and he has spent a huge amount of time looking at these different companies, several of which are quite anxious to be able to buy Tesla vehicles with FSD.
Okay, so then we've got what you and I call FSD, which is something that can be put on a car that you and I can buy today. And in that regard, they've also got a bunch of companies with systems that are anywhere from pretty good to shockingly good. Huawei, a company you will not see much in the US because of trade restrictions, because they make internet backbone items that may or may not have back doors into them to allow the Chinese government to look at all internet traffic going through a particular space. Huawei developed a car with a ton of sensors, cameras, LiDAR, radar, ultrasonic, probably all of that. And this car is able to, in Chinese traffic, navigate city driving. It can shoot into tiny gaps. It can bully its way in the way a human has to if it wishes to actually navigate the environment. And this is a system that is on the market today. You can get it today. And it apparently works really well. They've got other features that you and I would love to see. Kyle went to a mall with his friend. There was no parking. So they just got out and told the car to go do its thing. And the car will circle until it finds a spot and then take it. And you know what happens if it doesn't find a spot? It'll just circle until you're done shopping. Until you're done shopping. And then you summon it back and it comes back. And it just works. Unlike, any of the, unlike Smart Summon, which still has a lot of guardrails and for good reason. Just a few days ago, Matthew Donegan Ryan had a rented Model X in Hawaii. He used Smart Summon and it hit the car next to it. It pulled forward just fine, cranked the wheel hard, and clipped the bumper of the other car. $2,500. It's like, that's frustrating. So that's frustrating. So we will see some of that. All of these companies are taking different approaches. Some are vision only. Some are LiDAR plus vision. Some are radar, LiDAR, vision. So they are all taking different approaches and approaching the same destination. Some are more effective than others. Lee, I think he said, is more comparable to FSD version 11, maybe late version 11. It's pretty good, but it's nowhere close to where Tesla is today. What I think we may end up seeing is Tesla FSD existing in parts of the world and Chinese systems existing in other parts of the world with perhaps not a whole lot of overlap. I think Australia would be a place where you'd be able to see both systems active, but in North America, I think it'd be likely that FSD would be the primary winner, with Mexico having some of the Chinese ones, South America being maybe a free-for-all. And in China, we do not yet know how Tesla will perform because it hasn't been made available yet.
Right, right. So what would you think? I mean, I know you don't know and but we always speculate here. Well, you can speculate as much as you want, Brian. I'm not going to force you.
Appreciate it.
I'm not going to make you speculate. Um, we know or we don't know what we have been uh, as not being computer scientists and trying our best to understand what goes into creating an FSD. We know that we have, data, we have compute, we have the software that tells the compute what to do so that it can eventually create the planning. So we kind of try to wrap our heads around all of this. And our understanding was it takes, massive, massive amounts of data, massive amounts of compute, visual, data coming from all these cameras on these cars, 4 billion miles, I think, or whatever it was that Elon wanted to get to. Why do you think the Chinese are able to maybe leapfrog this without that kind of data and or compute?
Okay, so the first thing, and I know this isn't relevant to the discussion, but a 16 millimeter Sigma lens weighs almost a pound, and my camera is getting lower and lower because my tripod is not quite adequate to address it.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
there. Now I'm back in frame because I kept having to stay in frame. Who says they don't have the data? They have data on their market. They have been pushing as aggressively as Tesla has. They've been putting the cameras and the sensors on cars for years, and every vehicle that goes out is able to gather the data. I'm confident they have the data. Do they have the compute? I think the answer is yes, because while new high-end AI processing chips have some restrictions, there's always a gray market to get them in the back door, and the restrictions are new. Any compute that they did prior to 6 months ago, maybe, they were able to get whatever and do whatever. They also have homegrown chips. I think it's Huawei's got a 7 nanometer chip that apparently can perform as well as an Apple 5 nanometer chip. So the compute, I'm confident they have. How are they able to leapfrog? Sheer determination of will. They know that their market wants this product. They are in fierce competition with one another. Unlike in the US, where, to be honest, when it comes to autonomy, when it comes to EVs, Tesla is pretty much uncontested. There are a lot of new entrants eroding that bit of EV market share, but the market is still so vast. Hyundai knows they're not competing with Tesla. They're competing with their own internal combustion cars. In China, all companies are either a pure EV play or a range extended EV play. All of these companies are in absolutely direct competition with each other, and they know that not all of them are going to make it. GM, Ford, Stellantis, Honda, they all are of the mindset that we have room to screw up. And boy, are they acting accordingly. And that means that they can rest on their laurels a bit. And in doing so, fall behind, because we've got protectionism in Japan, protectionism in Korea, protectionism in the US or Europe or wherever that's going to allow us to survive. China's protectionism is a bit different. We'll give you funding to a point, and then it's up to you. You're not all going to make it. We will root for all of you, but you're not all going to make it. So there's an urgency there. Also worth noting, China graduates the most engineers in the world by far. So they've got thousands of very good universities. And of course, their students study internationally as well. Yeah. So they've got huge advantages on every front. And they do have the benefit of consistent government policies. They know that if a government says this is our 10-year plan, that will remain the 10-year plan. A lot of countries, not naming any names, have wild swings in policy every 4 years that makes business really hard to do. You'll see things like battery factories begin construction and then stop because the uncertainty is too great, and that puts us at a real disadvantage over countries.
Authoritarian government, yes. Yeah, top down government has advantages as long as they are
I mean, I'm not advocating
Oh,
for
no,
that,
no, I
and
know you're
you
not.
and I
I
know
know
that,
you're
but
not.
we're talking about reality here.
Yes,
We're
yeah,
not
oh, I
talking
know.
about
I
the
agree.
process. We're talking about
Yeah.
the result of the process. And
As long as that authoritarian is really good at what they do, it can be powerful.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Russia, Soviet Union was authoritarian, and
right.
despite their very weak economy, very weak manufacturing base, their rocket program was the best in the world for a time.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, and so the other part of my question, oh, I noted that in one part of the video, he talked about one of the vehicles that had autonomy, or not full autonomy yet, but it's level
Supervised.
supervised autonomy, was only like 20 grand. So they're not really, apparently they don't think that there's a big amount of money that they can charge for the autonomous feature.
I am of the mind that once autonomy is widely solved, it'll be a commodity like anything else. Uh, do you pay extra for, you know, uh, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't pay extra for, or certainly not much extra.
Right.
And once it becomes that good, who knows? It may become mandatory,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
3-point seat belts or airbags or any of the
Yes.
other safety features.
Right.
And I'd prefer that world where the price of safety is just baked into the purchase price and you just get it. You just have it. So I hope that that's where they're going. I don't remember him saying if the $20,000 model had the autonomy. I don't recall that part of it clearly enough, but
That, yeah, he had said that there was a 20,000 and a 60, I think like a 60,000. So the same company had both an expensive like luxury car, and then they had this 20,000, and both of them had the
okay.
autonomous capabilities.
And
Yeah.
so there you go. And the other thing to address, a lot of people say, great, but these companies are losing money.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. But are they losing money on a per unit basis? And I think the answer is no.
Mhm.
If you're losing money because you're still doing heavy R&D, heavy CapEx and OpEx that is leading to the future of better products, cheaper products, investors are more at peace with that. We, of course, as Tesla investors, uh, I was I invested in 2019. I knew that the company had made no money. I was okay with that because I understood what was coming next. And yeah, it worked out pretty okay for me.
Yeah, AJ has pointed out the other problem. I guess almost all of these known companies, the ones that are listed on the Chinese stock exchange and have to show their financials, are showing like 3-year payment terms. They're paying
Mhm.
their they're paying their suppliers like in 36 months or something. And I'm like, whoa, I wish I had that deal when I had my factory.
I haven't seen numbers quite that far out. I've seen BYD at something still absurd, 9-10 months, that is hiding a lot of downside.
Right.
But BYD, I would put in the category of too big to fail. They would be able to do something to survive. Yeah, they've they've got a long road, but they're going to, many of them are going to
Oh
make
yeah,
it.
oh yeah. I have absolutely no doubt of that. Yeah, so I thought this was a very, like I say, I don't usually cover the competition that much, but there's a difference between, this cute car and that cute car, blah 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 blah. And there's hundreds of them. That would be like an entire show. Somebody else could do that as their entire reason for being. But FSD is a critical component of the future of and Elon would be the first to say it. The don't buy Tesla stock unless you believe that there's going to be robot taxis. He said at one point. So to the extent that we need robotaxis to be a Tesla brand or Tesla thing, we need to have an FSD that is at least equal to, preferably better than, what other people are doing.
There is a level that is perfection,
Right.
and perfection isn't 100%. It's just very close to
Right.
it. You cannot avoid all accidents at all times. And I think many of these Chinese brands, as well as Tesla and surely others, will achieve that. And at that point, it comes back to who has the ability to make the most cars at the best price. And Tesla's well positioned for that. Tesla doesn't need to make every car in the world.
Right.
It would be, I think, a bad thing if they did. Competition is healthy. Elon has said that himself.
Sure.
I did also want to add, because I'm sure I'll get comments saying that I'm in China's pocket. I have not had any direct contact with any Chinese manufacturer as of today, with the only contact being at the Farnborough Fully Charged show 2 years ago. I talked to the sales reps at the booth. They didn't give me swag even. So I have no relationship with these companies. I have tried to reach out to them to cover some of their sales locations in Monterrey, Mexico. They were unresponsive. So if I'm in the pocket of big China, someone should tell me, because I'm not aware of that. I have seen no evidence that would support that.
No, I'm certainly not concerned about it, but then I'm not, the audience, there might be 7 that are concerned about that.
Maybe.
We should have those 7, definitely comment below. Okay, you also suggested that I ask you this question. You
I'm
said
ready.
China won't export.
That's a concern that some people have said. They said it doesn't matter how good these cars are, they're not going to export them, and they're definitely not going to export the autonomous technology. And I disagree. It is coming on strong in all of the major markets. Europe has had a lull. That lull appears to be correcting. They're starting to move more units. And as the cars get better and better and cheaper, and the autonomy gets more fully functional, it is absolutely going to be exported, not just to Europe, not just to Australia and New Zealand, but also to Africa, to South America, to markets that are typically ignored by US manufacturers.
Yeah, because the small quantities. Yeah.
And
So
low margins and
low
low
margins. Yeah.
low
Yeah.
sale
So
price. Yeah.
yeah. So it would appear maybe that, and even with like BYD, for instance, and I think some of these others, and with US, like Tesla has shown the way, it's going to be smarter to build in the region. And so I could see, the Chinese building in the region as opposed
Yes.
to, yeah.
In Nigeria, there was an electric car manufacturer for, from what I can tell, a brief period of time. I can't find any evidence that they're still around. Maybe they are. That was Nigeria's first EV manufacturing facility. And you watch the videos and you're like, that's a Chinese car. And what it was a knockdown assembly plant where they take in all the parts
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
piece them back together.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Was there anything else in that video that we should be paying attention to?
I don't think so. I think you covered all of it.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. That is, this is, I think, an important piece of what we have to be aware of going forward. I guess, Brian, the last thing I have to do, because I'm just fair this way, is I just have to say, Gary Black might be right.
I don't know what he said. Uh,
He said eventually it will be a commodity. And that,
oh,
yeah.
that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gary Black isn't universally wrong. I just know that a number of the people that he follows and supports are almost universally wrong, and that leads to bad information, bad analysis. In the 3 times I've met him for the first time, because he never remembers me, I would think at some point he would realize that there are better analysts out there, and that maybe he'd be better served to follow some of them. But hey, man, I've also had people say you should have him on as a guest, and then just put your name up on screen as Barry Black, so I could be the opposite. And I thought the opposite of Gary Black surely is already Brian White. The joke is right there, guys. It writes itself.
It writes itself, especially when my son is Brian and my brother's Gary.
Right there.
I don't know.
All the pieces, just got to put them together.
Everything has come together. All right, Brian, as always, thank you. Oh, and follow him. Follow him. He's become a big deal over the weekend. He wasn't before. It's been great to see. I don't know if he'll even talk to me anymore. We'll see what happens in the future. But boy, he blew up over the weekend, and are we thrilled? And you should be watching him. You should be watching his program. You should be watching him on X, and you should be subscribing to his Patreon. Those would be he'd like that in reverse order, by the way, if at all possible. All right. Thanks again, Brian. And we will, it's been great talking to you guys.